Hi, my name is Amber Wilson. I am 32 years old, a single mom with a secret most people would never guess. Everything changed last Thanksgiving when my own father threw me out of our family dinner. What my family never realized was that behind my modest appearance lay a business empire worth $58 million. dollars. The very same empire that had been quietly funding their lavish lifestyle for years. Before I share how that painful moment unfolded, let me know where you are watching from and make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happened next in this life-changing story. I grew up in a typical suburban neighborhood in Connecticut, the youngest of three children. My father, Matthew Wilson, worked as a bank manager, and my mother, Evelyn, was an elementary school teacher. My older brother, Patrick, is 5 years my senior, and my sister, Stephanie, is 3 years older than me. From the outside, we looked like the perfect American family. The reality behind closed doors was much different. As the youngest, I always felt like an afterthought in our household. Patrick was the golden boy, the firstborn son who could do no wrong. He was average in academics but excelled in sports, which made my father beam with pride. Stephanie was the beauty of the family, popular and charismatic, always the center of attention at family gatherings. And then there was me, quiet and studious, often overlooked. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" my mother would ask when I preferred reading over social events. "Patrick never gives us this much trouble," my father would say whenever I questioned their decisions. The comparisons were constant and wearing. Despite feeling like an outsider in my own family, I channeled my energy into academics. I studied twice as hard as my peers, determined to forge my own path. When my SAT scores came back nearly perfect, my parents seemed more surprised than proud. When I received a full scholarship to Stanford University, my accomplishment was downplayed at the family dinner announcement. "Well, that's nice, but college isn't everything," my father said dismissively. "Patrick is already making connections in the real world." My brother had skipped college and was working at a car dealership, which somehow impressed my parents more than my academic achievements. At Stanford, I thrived. Away from my family, I discovered my passion for technology and entrepreneurship. I joined startup clubs, interned at tech companies, and began building a network of like-minded innovators. By my junior year, I had developed a prototype for a cybersecurity software that attracted attention from venture capitalists. When I called home to share my excitement about a $5,000 seed investment I had secured, my mother sighed. "Honey, wouldn't it be better to focus on getting a stable job after graduation? All this startup talk sounds risky." After graduation, when my former classmates were accepting corporate jobs, I took the leap and founded Secure Nova, my cybersecurity company. The first 2 years were brutal. I worked 18-hour days, lived on ramen noodles, and poured every penny I had into the business. When I asked my parents for a small loan to help during a tight month, my father lectured me about financial responsibility before reluctantly sending $1,000 that came with weekly phone calls, asking when I would repay it. The turning point came in my third year of business when a major financial institution suffered a devastating hack. My solution was exactly what companies suddenly realized they needed. Within 6 months, Secure Nova went from struggling startup to industry leader. By year 4, we were valued at $15 million. As success came, my personal life took a different turn. I met Daniel, a charming marketing executive, and after a whirlwind romance, we married. My family finally showed interest in my life, not because I had built a successful company, but because I had finally done something they understood, gotten married. The marriage lasted 3 years before I discovered Daniel had been unfaithful multiple times. When I filed for divorce, my family was horrified, not by his betrayal, but by my decision to end the marriage. "Marriage takes work, Amber," my mother said. "Everyone has problems, but you don't just walk away." What brought me the greatest joy during this difficult time was the birth of my daughter, Lily. She was just 1 year old when the divorce was finalized, and she became my reason for everything. My family, however, saw my single motherhood as yet another failure. While they were judging my life choices, I was quietly building an empire. The company expanded internationally, developed new product lines, and acquired smaller competitors. By the time Lily was 4 years old, Secure Nova was valued at $58 million. And I had personally amassed significant wealth. Not once did I boast about my success to my family. Part of me hoped they would notice or perhaps read about it online, but they remained oblivious. trapped in their narrow view of what success should look like. Meanwhile, I noticed their social media posts showing new cars, home renovations, and luxury vacations they previously could never afford. What they didn't know was that I had set up anonymous monthly payments to my parents after learning my father had been laid off during company downsizing 5 years ago. I established a bank account that deposited $5,000 monthly into their checking account, labeled as Wilson Family Trust Distribution, to maintain my anonymity. I did the same for Patrick and Stephanie, sending them each $3,000 monthly after hearing about their financial struggles through my mother. I never told them I was their mysterious benefactor. Pride prevented me from revealing that the daughter they had always underestimated was now keeping them afloat. Instead, I watched from afar as they spent my money while continuing to dismiss my life choices. Throughout all this, Lily became my center. Unlike my parents, I promised myself that she would always feel loved and supported for exactly who she was. We built a beautiful life together in our San Francisco home, with weekend adventures and bedtime stories, creating the warm family environment I had always craved as a child. The call from my mother came unexpectedly on a crisp November morning. I was reviewing quarterly reports in my home office when my phone lit up with her name. "Amber, we'd like you and Lily to join us for Thanksgiving this year," she said without much preamble. "The whole family will be here, and they haven't seen Lily in so long. She must be so big now." I hesitated, calculating that it had been nearly 2 years since I had last seen my parents in person. Our communication had been limited to occasional phone calls and obligatory birthday messages. The last family gathering had ended with a tense conversation about my parenting choices, with my father suggesting Lily needed a male influence and my mother lamenting how difficult it must be for Lily to grow up in a broken home. "Are you sure, Mom?" I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. Last time wasn't exactly pleasant for anyone. "That's all in the past, dear. It's the holidays. Family should be together," she replied with forced cheerfulness. "Besides, your father is doing so much better now that his financial situation has stabilized. We all are. There's much to be thankful for." After ending the call, I sat staring out my office window at the San Francisco skyline. Part of me wanted to decline, to protect myself and Lily from potential judgment and criticism. But another part, the part that still yearned for family acceptance, saw this as an opportunity for reconciliation. "What do you think, Julia?" I asked my best friend over lunch the next day. Julia had been my roommate at Stanford and knew every detail of my complicated family dynamics. "Honestly, I think they don't deserve you," Julia said, stirring her latte. "But I also know how much it would mean to you if things could be different. Just promise me you won't let them make you feel small again." I spent the next 2 weeks preparing for the trip to Connecticut. I purchased thoughtful gifts for everyone: a vintage watch for my father that cost $6,000, a pair of diamond earrings for my mother, a golf membership for Patrick, and a spa weekend package for Stephanie. For my nieces and nephews, I selected educational toys and the latest gaming consoles. I wanted to be generous without being obvious about my wealth. Lily was excited about meeting her extended family. At 4 years old, she had few memories of them, having only seen them a handful of times in her young life. I took her shopping for a special Thanksgiving outfit, a burgundy velvet dress with matching shoes that made her feel like a princess, as she put it. "Will Grandpa like my dress?" she asked while twirling in front of the mirror. "He will love it," I assured her, pushing away memories of my father's constant criticism. "And you know what? You're going to meet your cousins, too. They're a little older than you, but I bet they'll want to play." Not once did I boast about my success to my family. Part of me hoped they would notice or perhaps read about it online, but they remained oblivious, trapped in their narrow view of what success should look like. Meanwhile, I noticed their social media posts showing new cars, home renovations, and luxury vacations they previously could never afford. What they didn't know was that I had set up anonymous monthly payments to my parents after learning my father had been laid off during company downsizing 5 years ago. I established a bank account that deposited $5,000 monthly into their checking account, labeled as Wilson Family Trust Distribution, to maintain my anonymity. I did the same for Patrick and Stephanie, sending them each $3,000 monthly after hearing about their financial struggles through my mother. I never told them I was their mysterious benefactor. Pride prevented me from revealing that the daughter they had always underestimated was now keeping them afloat. Instead, I watched from afar as they spent my money while continuing to dismiss my life choices. Throughout all this, Lily became my center. Unlike my parents, I promised myself that she would always feel loved and supported for exactly who she was. We built a beautiful life together in our San Francisco home with weekend adventures and bedtime stories, creating the warm family environment I had always craved as a child. The call from my mother came unexpectedly on a crisp November morning. I was reviewing quarterly reports in my home office when my phone lit up with her name. "Amber, we'd like you and Lily to join us for Thanksgiving this year," she said without much preamble. "The whole family will be here and they haven't seen Lily in so long. She must be so big now." I hesitated, calculating that it had been nearly 2 years since I had last seen my parents in person. Our communication had been limited to occasional phone calls and obligatory birthday messages. The last family gathering had ended with a tense conversation about my parenting choices, with my father suggesting Lily needed a male influence and my mother lamenting how difficult it must be for Lily to grow up in a broken home. "Are you sure, Mom?" I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Last time wasn't exactly pleasant for anyone." "That's all in the past, dear. It's the holidays. Family should be together," she replied with forced cheerfulness. "Besides, your father is doing so much better now that his financial situation has stabilized. We all are. There's much to be thankful for." After ending the call, I sat staring out my office window at the San Francisco skyline. Part of me wanted to decline, to protect myself and Lily from potential judgment and criticism. But another part, the part that still yearned for family acceptance, saw this as an opportunity for reconciliation. "What do you think, Julia?" I asked my best friend over lunch the next day. Julia had been my roommate at Stanford and knew every detail of my complicated family dynamics. "Honestly, I think they don't deserve you," Julia said, stirring her latte. "But I also know how much it would mean to you if things could be different. Just promise me you won't let them make you feel small again." I spent the next 2 weeks preparing for the trip to Connecticut. I purchased thoughtful gifts for everyone: a vintage watch for my father that cost $6,000, a pair of diamond earrings for my mother, a golf membership for Patrick, and a spa weekend package for Stephanie. For my nieces and nephews, I selected educational toys and the latest gaming consoles. I wanted to be generous without being obvious about my wealth. Lily was excited about meeting her extended family. At 4 years old, she had few memories of them, having only seen them a handful of times in her young life. I took her shopping for a special Thanksgiving outfit, a burgundy velvet dress with matching shoes that made her feel like a princess, as she put it. "Will Grandpa like my dress?" she asked while twirling in front of the mirror. "He will love it," I assured her, pushing away memories of my father's constant criticism. "And you know what? You're going to meet your cousins, too. They're a little older than you, but I bet they'll want to play." As our departure date approached, I found myself standing in my walk-in closet, deliberating over what to wear. My wardrobe contained designer pieces worth thousands, but I eventually selected a modest cashmere sweater and tailored pants. Something told me that appearing too successful might create more problems than it would solve. The night before our flight, I sat on my balcony overlooking the city lights, contemplating whether I should finally tell my family about my success. Would it change how they saw me? Would they be proud at last? Or would they simply see me as a resource to exploit further? I decided against it. If there was to be reconciliation, I wanted it to be based on who I was as a person, not what I had achieved financially. I wanted them to value me and Lily, without the incentive of wealth. The next morning, my driver loaded our luggage into the car for the trip to the airport. I had booked first-class tickets, but felt a twinge of anxiety as we settled into our seats. Lily, oblivious to my inner turmoil, was excited about the airplane snacks and the prospect of seeing snow in Connecticut. "Mommy, will there be other kids for me to play with?" Lily asked as the plane took off. "Yes, sweetheart. Your cousins Emma and Tyler will be there. They're Aunt Stephanie's children, and Uncle Patrick has a son named Jason, who is 7. "Do they know about Mr. Whiskers?" she asked, referring to her beloved stuffed cat that went everywhere with her. "Not yet. but I'm sure you can introduce them. I smiled, stroking her hair. As our plane cruised across the country, I scrolled through old family photos on my phone. Despite the emotional distance, I had continued sending my parents pictures of Lily over the years, updates they rarely acknowledged. There were so many milestones they had missed. Her first steps, her first words, her first day of preschool. I thought about my beautiful beach house in Honolulu, purchased a year ago as a getaway retreat. Only Julia knew about it. I had already arranged for the house to be prepared, just in case the Thanksgiving reunion went poorly and we needed an escape. Maybe this time will be different, I whispered to myself as Lily dozed beside me. Maybe they have changed. But even as I allowed hope to build, I made sure my contingency plans were in place. My assistant had confirmed our potential flight to Hawaii. My lawyers were on standby, and I had reviewed all the financial arrangements connecting me to my family. I wanted to believe in reconciliation, but experience had taught me to prepare for disappointment. As the plane began its descent into Hartford, I took a deep breath and gently woke Lily. Whatever happened in the next few days, I was determined to show my daughter what strength and self-respect looked like, even in the face of family disapproval. The rental car pulled into the familiar driveway of my childhood home, and I immediately noticed the changes. The modest colonial that had always been well-maintained but simple now featured an expanded wing, fresh landscaping, and a circular driveway where two new vehicles sat, a Mercedes SUV and a Lexus sedan. I recognized these as the cars my parents had proudly posted about on social media 6 months ago. Purchases made possible by the monthly deposits I had been making into their account. "Is this where you grew up, Mommy?" Lily asked, her eyes wide as she took in the large house. "Yes, baby. This is where Mommy lived when she was little," I replied, feeling a strange disconnect between the upgraded home before me and the simpler one from my memories. I helped Lily out of the car and retrieved our bags and the carefully wrapped gifts from the trunk. As we approached the front door, it swung open to reveal my mother. Her hair freshly colored and styled, wearing an outfit I recognized from a high-end brand. "There you are, finally," she said by way of greeting, her eyes immediately going to Lily. "And this must be Lily. My goodness, she has grown so much." She bent down slightly toward Lily, but didn't offer a hug. Instead, she straightened and stepped aside to let us in. "Your father is in the living room. Everyone else should be here within the hour." The interior of the house had been completely remodeled. Gone was the worn furniture and dated wallpaper of my youth, replaced by designer pieces, marble countertops, and what appeared to be expensive artwork. The monthly payments I had been making were clearly being put to use, though not in the way I had imagined when I first set them up to help with my father's unemployment. My father was sitting in a leather recliner watching a football game on a massive flat-screen television. He looked up briefly as we entered. "So, you made it," he said flatly before returning his attention to the game. No hug, no warm welcome for his granddaughter. Lily pressed against my leg, suddenly shy. I placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Dad, this is Lily. Lily, this is your grandfather." My father glanced at Lily again, his expression softening slightly. "Hello there," he said before turning back to the television. "You can put your bags in your old room, Amber. We've turned the guest room into a home gym, so Lily will have to stay with you." I swallowed my disappointment at the lukewarm reception and led Lily upstairs. My old bedroom had been converted into a storage space with a pull-out sofa bed crammed between boxes and old furniture. It was clear no effort had been made to prepare the space for our arrival. "Is this your room, Mommy?" Lily asked, looking around at the cluttered space. "It used to be a long time ago," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "Let's make it cozy for our stay, okay?" I spent the next 20 minutes clearing enough space for our bags and making up the sofa bed with the linens my mother had left folded on top. I could hear voices downstairs indicating that others had arrived. When we went back downstairs, my brother Patrick and his wife Diana were in the kitchen with my mother. Diana was arranging a charcuterie board while Patrick was pouring himself a whiskey that I recognized as a $200 bottle. "There she is," Patrick said, raising his glass slightly. "The prodigal daughter returns." "Hello, Patrick." "Diana," I nodded, keeping my tone friendly. "This is Lily." Diana gave a tight smile. Nice to meet you, Lily. Our Jason is outside with his grandfather. If you want to play... Before I could respond, the front door opened again, and my sister Stephanie swept in with her husband Thomas and their 2 children. Stephanie was draped in designer clothing and accessories that I estimated cost more than most people's monthly salary. Amber, what a surprise. Mom said you might come, but I didn't think you actually would, Stephanie said, air kissing near my cheek. She looked down at Lily with an appraising eye. And this is your daughter. She looks just like you. The way she said it made it sound less like a compliment and more like an observation. Thomas barely acknowledged me, immediately gravitating toward my father and the football game. Their children, Emma and Tyler, gave Lily curious looks before their mother ushered them toward the kitchen for snacks. As the afternoon progressed, I noticed the subtle digs and underhanded comments directed my way. So, Amber, still doing that computer thing? My father asked during a commercial break. Yes, Dad. My cybersecurity company is doing well, I replied. He nodded dismissively. Must be hard to manage that and raise a child alone. If you had stayed with Daniel cheated on me repeatedly, I reminded him calmly. And Lily and I are doing just fine. My mother interjected. Well, we are just glad you could make it for the holidays. Your father has been so generous lately, helping all of us out. Did you see the new addition to the house? And Patrick's new position at the dealership is going so well. I bit my tongue, knowing that the generous help my father was supposedly providing was actually coming from my bank account. As dinner preparations continued, I offered to help several times, but was rebuffed by my mother and Stephanie, who had taken over the kitchen. We have it under control, Stephanie said. Why don't you keep an eye on the children? That's more your speed these days, right? I took Lily outside where the children were playing, only to find my nephew Jason bossing Lily around and taking toys from her. When I gently intervened, my brother Patrick appeared at the back door. Let the kids work it out, Amber, he called. You can't helicopter parent forever. That's the problem with kids today. I bit back a retort, instead focusing on comforting Lily, who was clearly upset by her cousin's behavior. Later, as I was helping Lily wash up for dinner, I overheard my parents talking in their bedroom, the door slightly ajar. I don't know why she even came, my father was saying. Always acted like she was better than us. And now look at her. Single mother, probably struggling to make ends meet. Well, she is family, my mother replied. And who knows? Maybe she will finally realize she needs our help. Lord knows we've done well enough to support her and the child if necessary. The Wilson Family Trust has been a blessing, my father agreed. Though I still don't understand where exactly that money comes from. I leaned against the wall, taking deep breaths to calm myself. The Wilson Family Trust they were referring to was the account name I had created for my payments to them. They had no idea that their comfortable lifestyle was courtesy of the daughter they continued to belittle. For a brief moment, I considered packing our bags and leaving right then. But Lily was excited about Thanksgiving dinner, and part of me still hoped that somehow the evening could turn around. It was a hope that would soon prove painfully naive. The dining room had been transformed from the modest space I remembered into something from a home design magazine. A long mahogany table gleamed under a crystal chandelier that definitely hadn't been there during my childhood. Fine china, silver cutlery, and crystal glasses were meticulously arranged on a lace tablecloth. The centerpiece was an elaborate arrangement of fall flowers that looked professionally designed. Everyone find your seats, my mother announced, carrying in a platter with a perfectly roasted turkey. I have place cards set up. I quickly discovered that Lily and I had been positioned at the far end of the table, away from the center where my parents, Patrick and Stephanie, and their spouses were seated. Our placement felt symbolic of our status in the family hierarchy. Once everyone was seated, my father stood to say grace, something that had never been a tradition in our mostly secular household growing up. Lord, we thank you for this bountiful meal and for bringing our family together, he began, his voice taking on a ceremonial tone I had never heard before. We thank you for the prosperity you have bestowed upon us this year. The Wilson family has been truly blessed with success and good fortune. I noticed Patrick and Stephanie nodding solemnly while their spouses looked appropriately reverent. My mother beamed at my father as though he were delivering a profound sermon rather than a dinner prayer. We also pray for those less fortunate, he continued with a quick glance in my direction that didn't go unnoticed. May they find their way to better circumstances through hard work and good choices. After the prayer, the food began circulating. The spread was impressive. The turkey, cranberry sauce, 3 different types of stuffing, mashed potatoes, sweet potato casserole, green bean casserole, homemade rolls, and various other sides. It was far more elaborate than any holiday meal I remembered from my childhood. The turkey is from a special organic farm, my mother explained as she served. It cost almost $300, but your father insisted on only the best this year. $300 for a turkey, when my father had once lectured me about spending $20 on a pizza. The irony was not lost on me. As everyone began eating, the conversation turned to updates from family members, each seemingly designed to showcase their success. We just got back from our European vacation, Stephanie announced, cutting into her turkey. 2 weeks touring France and Italy. The villa we rented in Tuscany had the most breathtaking views. Thomas played golf every day while I visited the local wineries. It was a well-deserved break. After closing that major account at work, the bonus was substantial, Thomas added. We're thinking of renovating our kitchen next, maybe installing one of those imported Italian marble islands. Patrick nodded appreciatively. Nice. Diana and I are considering a kitchen upgrade too, after I got that promotion to sales director. The dealership had its best quarter ever, and the owner personally thanked me for my contribution. That's our boy, my father said proudly. Always knew you had it in you. The conversation continued in this vein, with everyone sharing stories of purchases, promotions, and plans for future expenditures. Not once did anyone ask about my life or work until my mother suddenly seemed to remember I was there. So, Amber, how is that little computer job of yours going? She asked during a lull in the conversation. Before I could answer, Stephanie interjected with a laugh. Mom, I doubt Amber has time for career advancement as a single mother. That must be such a struggle. It must be, Diana agreed, looking at me with manufactured sympathy. I can't imagine raising Jason without Patrick. Children need a father figure. I took a sip of water, choosing my words carefully. Actually, my company has been doing very well. We've expanded internationally. And international now, is it? My father interrupted with clear skepticism. Well, that sounds impressive, though I always thought you would have settled into a more traditional career by now. Something stable. My work is very stable, Dad, I replied. In fact, cybersecurity is one of the fastest growing fields, especially with the increase in... Speaking of growing, my mother cut in, clearly uninterested in my career. Lily seems small for her age. Are you sure she's eating properly? I felt my jaw tighten. Lily is perfectly healthy and exactly where she should be developmentally. Her pediatrician is very pleased with her growth. Children from broken homes often show developmental delays, Stephanie said as though reciting from a parenting manual. Studies show that divorce can be traumatic for young children. Lily is not from a broken home, I said firmly. She has a loving, stable home with me. But no father, my father pointed out. Every child needs a father. Your mother and I provided you with a 2-parent household, and look how well Patrick and Stephanie turned out. The implication that I had somehow turned out poorly hung in the air. Thomas cleared his throat. I read an article about how children of single mothers are more likely to drop out of school, get involved with drugs, that sort of thing. No offense, Amber. That is absurd, I said, feeling my patience wearing thin. And deeply offensive, actually. No need to get defensive, Patrick said, refilling his wine glass. We're just concerned about Lily's well-being. After all, you did make the choice to leave Daniel. Daniel cheated on me repeatedly, I said, my voice rising slightly. That was not a choice I made, it was a consequence of his actions. Marriage takes work, my mother said dismissively. Your father and I have had our challenges, but we never gave up. Mom, I said, trying to keep my tone even. There is a difference between working through challenges and staying with someone who repeatedly betrays your trust. Well, it's water under the bridge now, my father said. Though I still think you acted hastily. Daniel came from a good family. He could have provided for you properly. I bit back a retort about how I was more than capable of providing for myself and Lily. Instead, I focused on cutting Lily's turkey into smaller pieces, aware that the conversation was making her uncomfortable. The dinner continued with more subtle and not so subtle digs at my life choices. As dessert was being served, the conversation shifted to finances. That monthly distribution from the Wilson Family Trust has been such a blessing, my mother said, serving pumpkin pie. I don't know who set it up, but it has allowed us to really enjoy life these past few years. Yes, it was quite a surprise when it started showing up, my father agreed. Right around the time I was laid off, almost like an angel was watching over us. We get distributions too, Stephanie said. $3,000 a month like clockwork. It's made such a difference for our lifestyle. Patrick nodded. Same here. Diana was able to quit her job and focus on being a full-time mom because of it. What about you, Amber? My mother asked. Do you get distributions too? I shook my head. No, I don't receive anything from this trust. Well, that's strange, my father frowned. Though I suppose they must allocate based on need, and with your international business, you probably don't need the help. There was a note of sarcasm in his voice that made it clear he didn't believe my business was doing well at all. Just then, Lily accidentally bumped her glass of water, spilling it across the table. The water spread quickly, seeping into the lace tablecloth and dripping onto the floor. Oh no, I'm sorry, Lily exclaimed, her eyes wide with distress. Before I could reassure her that accidents happen, my father slammed his hand on the table, making everyone jump. For God's sake, he shouted, his face reddening. That tablecloth was imported from France. It cost over $1,000. Lily's lower lip trembled and tears welled in her eyes. Dad, it's just water, I said, already reaching for my napkin to help mop up the spill. It will dry. Lily didn't mean to. This is exactly what I'm talking about, my father continued, his voice rising. No discipline, no proper parenting, just another spoiled child who doesn't know how to behave at a dinner table. I stood up, placing a protective hand on Lily's shoulder. That is completely uncalled for. She is 4 years old and it was an accident. Oh, hey, here we go. Stephanie rolled her eyes. Always making excuses. This is why children need proper parenting with boundaries and consequences. Lily has plenty of boundaries and appropriate consequences, I said, my voice tight with anger. What she doesn't need is to be screamed at by adults who should know better. The tension in the room was palpable as everyone stared at me, clearly shocked that I had talked back to my father. For a moment, no one spoke. Then my father pushed back his chair and stood up, his expression thunderous. Perhaps it's time we address the elephant in the room, he said ominously. And I knew that the evening was about to take an even worse turn. My father's face had turned a dangerous shade of red as he stood at the head of the table, his napkin thrown down beside his half-eaten pie. The room fell silent except for Lily's quiet sniffles as she tried to hold back tears. Amber, he began, his voice deliberately controlled but thrumming with anger. Your mother and I have been patient. We have watched you make one poor decision after another, choosing that ridiculous startup over a real career, throwing away a perfectly good marriage, depriving your daughter of a father and a stable home. I opened my mouth to respond, but he held up his hand to silence me. No, you will listen for once in your life. You have always thought you knew better than everyone else. Always had to do things your way. And look where it's gotten you. Where exactly do you think it's gotten me, Dad? I asked quietly, my hand still resting protectively on Lily's shoulder. A single mother struggling to make ends meet with some fantasy about running an international business. He scoffed. Meanwhile, the rest of this family has thrived. Your brother and sister have real careers, stable marriages, children who are being raised properly. My mother nodded in agreement. We worry about you, Amber, and about Lily. This is not the life we wanted for you. The life you wanted for me, I repeated slowly. And what life was that exactly? One where I stayed in an abusive marriage? One where I gave up my dreams to fit your narrow definition of success? There you go again. Always so dramatic, Stephanie interjected. Daniel wasn't abusive. He made a mistake. People work through these things if they're committed to their vows. You have no idea what my marriage was like, I said, feeling my carefully maintained composure beginning to crack. And you have no idea what my life is like now because none of you have bothered to ask or care. We care enough to tell you the truth, Patrick said. Someone needs to. You're not doing Lily any favors by pretending everything is fine when clearly you're struggling. Who says I'm struggling? I asked, genuinely confused by their persistent assumption. My father laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. Please, Amber, look at yourself. Your clothes are plain. You drive a rental car, you never talk about vacations or purchases like the rest of us. It's obvious you're barely getting by. I looked down at my cashmere sweater, which I had deliberately chosen for its understated elegance rather than flashy branding. The irony that my family equated my lack of materialistic boasting with financial struggle was almost amusing. Actually, Dad, I chose not to broadcast my finances because I thought it would be in poor taste. But since you bring it up, I am doing just fine. Fine enough to help your family? My mother asked pointedly. Because we have been carrying your weight for years. While you've been playing entrepreneur, we have been the ones stepping up to help Patrick and Stephanie when they needed it. I felt a flicker of anger at the injustice of her statement. Carrying my weight? I have never asked any of you for financial help, not once since I graduated college. But you should have, my father said as though this was proof of my failure. A responsible adult knows when to ask for help. Instead, you've isolated yourself and your daughter, too proud to admit when you're in over your head. The accusations were so far from reality that I almost laughed. Instead, I took a deep breath and decided it was time for some honesty. Actually, I think you might be confused about who has been helping whom in this family. My father's eyes narrowed. What is that supposed to mean? The Wilson Family Trust that has been sending you $5,000 every month for the past 5 years, and Patrick and Stephanie $3,000 each. Have you ever wondered where that money really comes from? The room went deadly quiet. My father's expression shifted from anger to confusion. That money comes from a family trust set up by your grandfather, he said, but there was a note of uncertainty in his voice. No, Dad, it doesn't. My grandfather never set up any trust. Then where? My mother began, her voice trailing off as realization began to dawn. Those payments come from me, I said simply. I set them up after learning Dad had lost his job 5 years ago. I wanted to help, but I knew your pride would never let you accept money directly from me. Disbelief washed over their faces, followed quickly by shock. That's ridiculous, Patrick sputtered. You expect us to believe you've been sending us thousands of dollars every month? With what money? With money from my very real, very successful international business, I replied calmly. Secure Nova, the cybersecurity company I founded, is currently valued at $58 million. I own 70%. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see them all doing the mental math, the color draining from my father's face as he calculated what that meant. You're lying, Stephanie finally said, though her voice lacked conviction. If you were that successful, we would have heard about it. Would you? I asked. None of you have ever shown any interest in my career. None of you have ever asked me about my company or my success. You were all too busy assuming I was a failure. My father seemed to recover his composure, his expression hardening again. If what you're saying is true, which I doubt, then you have been deceiving this family for years, playing some kind of sick game, pretending to be less successful than you are. No, Dad, I said. I have simply been living my life without needing to broadcast my financial status to earn your approval, something the rest of you might want to try sometime. So now you think you're better than us. My father's voice rose again. You come into my house and insult my family. I have not insulted anyone, I said evenly. I am simply telling you the truth that you asked for. The truth, he repeated, almost spitting the word. The truth is that you have always been selfish, always thinking only of yourself. And now you want us to believe you're some secret millionaire? That you've been helping us out of the goodness of your heart while looking down on us. I have never looked down on you, I said, feeling a deep sadness replace my anger. I have only ever wanted your acceptance, your love, the same things I have always wanted. Love, my father scoffed. You want to talk about love when you've been lying to us for years, playing some twisted game to make yourself feel superior. It wasn't a game, Dad, I said. I genuinely wanted to help without making you feel indebted to me. I know how important your pride is. My pride? He thundered, face flushing again. This has nothing to do with my pride. This is about your deceit, your manipulation. Matthew? My mother placed a hand on his arm, looking suddenly concerned. Perhaps we should all calm down. And no, Evelyn, I will not calm down. He shook off her hand. First, she abandons her marriage. Then she raises her child in a broken home. And now, we find out she's been playing puppet master with our finances, acting like some kind of savior while judging us for accepting help we thought came from my half. By now, Lily was openly crying, frightened by the shouting. I pulled her onto my lap, cradling her protectively. I think we should go, I said quietly. This is upsetting, Lily, and clearly we are not going to resolve anything tonight. Yes, you should go, my father said, his voice cold and final. In fact, I want you out of my house right now. Dad, Patrick interjected, looking uncomfortable for the first time. Maybe we should all just take a break. No, my father shouted, slamming his hand on the table again, making the dishes rattle. I want her out. She comes here with her lies and her judgments, upsetting everyone's Thanksgiving. They're not lies, I said, standing up with Lily in my arms. But you are right that we should leave. Get out, my father roared, pointing toward the door. Get out of my house and don't come back. We don't need your charity or your condescension. The room fell silent, except for Lily's soft sobs against my shoulder. Everyone stared, some with shock, others with embarrassment, and a few with what looked like a hint of satisfaction at seeing me publicly humiliated. I looked around at the faces of my family, people who had never truly seen me or valued me for who I was. In that moment, something inside me finally broke free, the desperate need for their approval that had been with me since childhood. All right, I said simply, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. Lily, say goodbye. We're leaving now. I gathered our coats in my purse, not bothering with the rest of our belongings upstairs. Those could be replaced. What could not be replaced was my daughter's sense of security and my own self-respect. As we walked toward the front door, past relatives who averted their eyes or stared in morbid fascination, I maintained my composure. Dignity was the only thing I could control in that moment, and I refused to let them take that from me too. Happy Thanksgiving, I said quietly as I opened the door, not looking back as I walked out into the cold November night with my daughter in my arms, leaving behind the family that had never truly been mine. The hotel room was quiet except for the sound of Lily's steady breathing as she finally slept, exhausted from crying. I sat in the armchair by the window, staring out at the lights of Hartford, feeling strangely calm after the emotional hurricane of the evening. My phone vibrated with an incoming call. Julia's name flashed on the screen. How bad was it? She asked when I answered, skipping any preamble. About as bad as it could possibly be, I replied, keeping my voice low to avoid waking Lily. My father literally threw us out of Thanksgiving dinner. Oh, Amber, Julia breathed. I'm so sorry. What happened? I recounted the evening's events, from the subtle digs to the water spill incident to my father's explosive finale. When I finished, there was silence on the other end of the line. Julia, are you still there? I'm here, she replied. I'm just trying to process the level of toxicity you just described. Your family sounds even worse than I